Hi class, so this is our second topic for media and information literacy. But before I start, in this lesson, you will discover how media evolved in the world. So we will start from the world, and then next is how media developed in the Philippines. So from global to local, and who owns the media. So our objectives for this, first we At, hopefully, after the lesson, you will learn how to do the following: identify historical context that made media possible in the Philippines. Also, appreciate the evolution of media that gave you the latest media gadget you have. And lastly, assess the quality and extent of your own media habits. Remember the last or the first task that I gave you. Now, every new thing has a beginning. We all know that. It is always important to look back at history in order to understand how things work in the present. This relevance is also needed in order for us to look at what is yet to come in the future. Who knows? Maybe the next inventor of the latest state of the art media gadget could be in this classroom or in this online classroom. Like you. Alright? We do not know. Okay, so ever since let me just have this video played. Okay. So ever since the first human beings evolved on planet Earth, communicating with each other is one of the most essential. Yes, it is very important and immediate need that they had to learn, developed, and master. So this is to convey information they want to share and get the information they also need. And whenever there's a need for information and communication, we now know that certain kinds of media should also be present in order to help facilitate this basic human need. Right. Okay, so when human beings learn, excuse me, how to control their body parts to be able to talk language is one of the first things that the brain develop and enhance. So thus, we could consider oral traditions as the basic ancestor of information and communication flow. Not only was language essential to use for everyday life, it also developed humans into having more complex thoughts. This is the reason why ancient civilizations and older cultures have a tradition of passing down stories through oral means. Even specific art forms such as poetry, special epic poems, have their roots in in oral traditions. It is only upon the invention of writing, okay, when some of the orally handed down stories are and information were recorded. So archaeologists have also found evidence that early human beings were able to communicate through writing symbols or drawing crude pictures like what you see in the video. For example, this is the Chauvet cave paintings discovered in southern France show evidence of symbols etched into the walls dating back to more than 30,000 years ago. This shows that as humans, we have the basic tendency to record what goes on around us. So we also have this need to document our experiences so that others could learn or improve from them. This is also to help facilitate our daily life transactions. Early evidence of more formal-looking recordings could be traced back to ancient Mesopotamia. Ayan. So difficult to pronounce the
Mesopotamia.
So also known as the cradle of Western civilization, located with the former um, Tigris-Euphrates river system in the region where modern-day Iraq, Kuwait, parts of Syria, Turkey, and Iran are now located. So clay and stone tablets were found to have some form of symbolic impressions that make up ancient languages. The most important discovery of such is called the Code of Hammurabi. There. So dating back in 1772 BCE, it contains written laws and codes of Babylonian king named Hammurabi who ruled during those ancient times. So from writing in stones and clay, humans were able to develop other materials for documentation. Okay, so if you
Unlike its
check on this video, okay, so this is the discovery of papyrus by ancient Egyptians and other forms of writing tools. This eventually led to the advent of paper. So the new invention spread into other parts of the world, making the recording and documenting of human life even more extensive and profound. Next, in East Asia. So wood block printing was developed around 200 CE. When Chinese and Korean craftspeople wrote letters in textile or paper using letters carved onto wood blocks. So as you see on the video, these are the wood blocks. Imagine each letter or character of the various Chinese languages is etched onto wood blocks. It's so difficult. Then they used ink and pressed it on a surface. So in the year 1040, the movable type was invented, replacing the system of wood block in certain areas in the region. But okay, the most important contribution to revolutionizing the printing press is German goldsmith Johann Gutenberg's improvement of the movable type printing press. So this is his movable printing press. So using his skills and knowledge in metals, he created a better version of the movable type in 1453. So there. The relatively fewer letters of the English alphabet as opposed to the more intricate Chinese characters contributed to the early success of this invention because his printing press could mass produce many pages in a given day. The printing of books became cheaper and faster. So as a result, the cost of books and printed matter lessened, making it more affordable to more people from various walks of life. So this first form of mass media production revolutionized the way Europe and the Western civilization developed. Spreading towards other parts of the world, it also led to more reinventions that ushered the human race into modernity. All right, and that is that concludes the pre-industrial age. Now let's proceed to the industrial age. Okay, so for the industrial age, so from electricity and technology, so let me show. Okay, so when civilization started embracing more technological advances like the Gutenberg printing press, the world was ushered into the industrial age. So the harnessing of electricity for daily use was also characteristic of this age. Okay? Some of the technological inventions developed with various electricity-related experimentations, also characterized by social change, politically motivated movements, and rapid economic development. So this is the age, or this age clearly saw the active role of technology in advancing the way of we communicate and disseminate information. So this is evident in the way the world shifted gears from being a predominantly agriculture economy towards a more industrialized economy. So this means the evolution of factories, there, assembly line workflows, and devising mechanisms that would speed up the production of what human beings need. So due to the mass-producing printing press, newspapers were soon developed, allowing citizens access to news and information. Okay, so for instance, the very first newspaper was printed in the late 1590s is in Western Europe. This form of media reached America in 1690, while the first newspaper advertisement appeared in 1704. So magazines followed suit in 1741 as America also prepared to enshrine their constitution paper on paper in 1790. So these are the dates or the year that uh, you need to remember there. Image recording and invention of photography also began during this era. Many individuals from different industrialized nations were tinkering with their respective photographic inventions. But it was Frenchman Louis Daguerre who is in 1839 somehow ushered what we now know as photography. Okay, so that's what you see on the video. Other systems of capturing more pictures were developed, but none stood out like Eastman's improvement of the rolled and perforated celluloid film to go with his camera. So Eastman invented the first easy to use handled camera called the Kodak camera. So you all, I'm not sure though if you're familiar with this, but when I was in elementary, I used to go to the Kodak store and then have the film developed. Okay. So making photography accessible to the masses in 1888. So there. Other technological advancement that led to our modern day media could be traced in the invention of telegraph. So if you watch some war films, they use telegraph to send messages. Okay, so invented in 1844 by Samuel Morse. So this is the telegraph.
The left transmitting text.
Okay, so that's how they use. There's this code that they follow, and then it's being transmitted. That is the channel used to transmit the message. So this part is what you call the encoding. Okay. And then also we have Alexander Graham Bell in 1876 who invented the telephone. So this is the first telephone. And also we have Thomas Edison for the bulb, okay? And we also have Emil Berliner. So these are the people who also contributed to the evolution of media during the industrial era. But the person, okay, or but we have the two French brothers, Auguste and Louis Lumiere. So medyo, it's kind of French, so please pardon my pronunciation. Premiered their short documentary film. Okay. So this is their short documentary film, and this was the first. So they used this invention called cinematography. The following year, they opened the first theater called Cinema. And then you have the Scottish physicist,
Base.
okay, James Clerk Maxwell, for the electromagnetic waves, for the radio waves. But its German physicist Heinrich Hertz demonstrated the first transmission of these radio waves in 1887. And individually, Frenchman Edouard Branly and English physicist Oliver Lodge worked on improvement of this radio wave frequency, the transmitter and then the receiver, and Guglielmo Marconi recognized the commercial viability of radio system in 1894. Then that concludes the industrial era, and then now we proceed to the electronic age. So for the electronic age, I'm not sure though, but I think you somehow um, got to see these things from your parents or from your grandparents. Okay, you have there the disc, okay, the big disc. You have the cassette tape. Okay. So while the major media-related technological developments of the industrial age heavily utilized electricity, the world was not yet ushered into the electronic age upon the invention of such gadgetry and devices. Perhaps an overlap in the industrial age and electronic age happened when human beings realized the importance and relevance of information as a commodity. So this means the messages or pieces of information exchange from one hand to the other with some form of cost or economic transaction connected to it. So here comes the capitalist. Thus, the electronic age is also characterized by the way humans consumed information in a rapidly developing pace, leading us towards what they call the information society. So this was the first evidence upon the utilization of telegraph. So since the transfer of information from one point to another became fast and instantaneous, communication in itself became a form of industry, which information being a sole valuable product. So the development of the fax machine, ayan, and cell phone also resulted in a faster way of transmitting messages, causing telegraph or eventually die. So soon we have the cable, and then the satellite technologies also paved the way for faster transmittal of media content, whether for information or entertainment purposes. So this development also led to communication being separated from other industries such as transportation. So before, the delivery of goods from one point to another encompassed the use of physical transportation. Electronic signals or waves and wired or even wireless technology soon discarded this need for physical transport. So there are a lot of development. So with the development of the broadcast industry, also under the electronic age, okay? The development of broadcast industry, particularly the expansion of radio and television's reach, the term mass media took its full effect as it changed the habits of various cultures, especially in the 1950s and 1960s. So this is during the time of my mom. So perhaps your mom or your grandparents. My parents or my parents and my grandparents. So being inside the house, like part of the appliances or furniture, the radio set and television set permitted the household and programs produced for this media held the captive imaginations of listeners and viewers. Yet the music and film will not be left behind. On the contrary, the development of personal electronic gadgets and recorders paved the way for more access to mass media. So music saw the development of the earlier phonograph disc, so that's the bigger one, into the vinyl records, the old ones. If you see some commercials with seniors, they usually play the what we call the vinyl records, the big ones. Okay, the one that is going around, and then they hear music. Then the magnetic tape, okay, which produced the open track player and cassette tape. So you have the cassette tape, we have that in the 90s, 80s, 90s, okay. We even record using that. Then you have there the later converted to data and stored in a compact disc or CDs, okay. Then portable gadgets like Sony Walkman. Okay, so if you had Sony Walkman in the 90s, you're rich. Or the Sony Discman revolutionized the way we carried our music with us. As for film, here you go. There were also tape formats like the VHS. Yes, this is during the 90s. If you have, again, when I was in elementary, you have and you had VHS, then you're rich. Okay, your family is rich because you can afford that. And then from VHS, it becomes disc format. Okay, that was I was already in high school then. My gosh, I'm already old. I am already disclosing my age to you guys. Okay. Um, disc, VCDs, and now DVDs. Okay. So the evolution of the film. But as soon as media products could be converted digitally into intangible data, another era ushered in, and this is the digital age. All right, so for the digital age, this refers to our current age or the current age. This is in like 2000. Wherein information is still seen as a commodity, yet its mode of recording, storage, delivery, and playback relies heavily on digital technology. So digital technology encompasses the breaking down of information into a readable and easily transferable 0-1 computer binary. Okay. So you have there the that's the Avaya phone. You have there the iPod. So here comes Bill Gates, okay, for the so this was evident in the way that the personal computer evolved during the time when Steve Jobs and Wozniak of Apple famed the IBM company. Okay, the IBM company and later Bill Gates of Windows were introducing various models of prototypes of hardware and software during the 1970s. So soon the world could see the materialization of these various efforts as seemingly science fiction material became science and technology fact. And then you have there the from uh, Facebook, from Friendster to Facebook, and then now you have Twitter. So there were a lot of changes, okay, in terms of how you transmit or convey the messages to others. All right. So that's the end of the digital age. Now let's proceed to Philippine media. Okay, so the history of Philippine media in the Philippines usually coincides with the colonial history of the nation, wherein it becomes a byproduct of various political movements and upheavals. So, similar to the development of media in the world, the development of media in the country also had local endemic roots as well as foreign brought predecessors. Okay. All right, so from our historians, we learned that the existence of a language system in the pre-colonial Philippines was already in place in the form of written word. So the most notable discovery of which is the ancient alphabet called Alibata or Baybayin. Are you guys familiar with that? Okay. Actually, there's a lot of videos you could check on YouTube where you could learn how to write Baybayin. This is actually my next plan to learn how to write Baybayin. Okay. So whose form was similar to image-based types of characters of our Asian neighbors. Okay, and of course the literary creations, the folk tales, the epics, family histories. So the town carrier's major role was to go around the barangay or their small towns and announce important information that concerns the citizenry. In other historical accounts, the umalokohan was actually a person needed to settle arguments within the barangay. So the barangay head or the datu would actually call the people this call for special elections to place someone as the umalohokan, to help settle a certain dispute. So this is happening now. We settle dispute in the barangay. Okay? So when the argument was settled, the umalokan's term of office also ends. So this is no wonder that today's media would also have the kind of balancing function wherein two opposing sides of an issue would be featured. Next, you have the print industry and Filipino freedom. So books, magazines, newspapers were brought to the Philippines by the ancient colonizers, mostly printed in the language that not everybody in the archipelago could speak. So that time it was Spanish. So remember, if you remember your world history, there were two great um, countries who competed or that competed in colonizing or in searching for new territories. Those were uh, the Spain and Portugal. Okay. Originally, Magellan is a Portuguese. However, his proposal of um, sailing to the west was not approved. So he went to the King of Spain, and he got the support he needed. And then we were and Magellan found the Philippines. All right, so there you have there uh, the Del Superior Gobierno. This is the first newspaper, which is in 1811. Okay, it was intended for the Spaniards only, so it was written in Spanish. So the early Filipino revolutionaries recognized this literacy divide and schooled themselves by learning how to read and write in their language and in the foreign one as well. So that is why the very first newspapers in the country sprouted during the time when Filipinos were beginning to free themselves from the colonial masters. La Solidaridad was the most popular of this nationalistic newspaper, which was published in 1889. And of course, we all know how our national hero Jose Rizal also wrote his two famous novels that criticized the Spanish rule, Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. So this proves that the pen could also be mightier than the sword. And both could work together to topple an oppressive regime. Okay, next, during the American period, so we have when some of the long-running newspapers we have in the country were established. So you have there the Manila Times and Manila Bulletin. So Manila Times was established in 1898. Manila Bulletin was in 1900. So since the Americans taught us English, it was not hard for Filipinos to keep abreast of the contents of the media's content. Next, the change of Japanese occupation. So Filipinos got their taste of media censorship when selected newspapers were allowed to run under tight content control. So underground media operated during the time until the country was liberated from Japanese rule. So since then, post-war Philippines enjoyed a healthy and free press practice. So this was when the watchdog function of the media went into full swing. So meaning the press kept a close eye on the happenings of the government and reported wrongdoing. So the public was always aware of what's going on or what happens. Then we have their martial law, okay, in 1972. So then the president, Ferdinand Marcos' first move were to suppress press freedom, forcing our brightest journalists underground and even jailing some of them. So you have some of these bright and bold luminaries included Jose Burgos, Felix Bautista, and Melinda de Jesus. Raul and Leticia Locsin, Eugenia Apostol and Leti Jimenez Magsanok, and Joaquin Chino, who ran the Manila Times during this period. So these newspapers and journalists that established them were always on the run, but were able to contribute to informing. So that's how difficult information then during the time of martial law, because the government has the control or had the control to what should be conveyed or disseminated to the public and what should not. However, because of these journalists who wanted to expose the truth to the public, their lives were at stake. And you know what happened to ABS-CBN during that time? It was taken from the Lopezes. Then you have the European film import. Okay, so remember the Lumiere Brothers cinematography film earlier that I mentioned. You have there the Zarzuela, You have there the Jose Nepomucenos Dalagang Bukid, okay, and the father of Philippine cinema is Nepomuceno. And we also had Hollywood films. So during the Spanish period, Filipinos who didn't understand the language of the movie appreciated just the image. That's what we do if we do not understand. Just like the Koreans nowadays, right? We do not understand what they're really saying without the subtitle, okay? But we appreciate the image, okay? Even the music. So for entertainment factor, but became a viable form of mass media communication during the Japanese period, and Japanese led the production of propaganda films. So this is also the dawn of freedom, highlighted the World War II aim of the Japanese to have an Asia for Asians. So this was co-directed by Gerardo de Leon. Okay. So this was starred by Fernando Po Sr. and other Japanese and Filipino actors. Then you have the golden age of Philippine cinema. So you have there the Manuel Conde was the first to bring an Asian film of the prestigious international and film festivals in Italy and France. And during the martial law, film was heavily censored also. There's still film, but it is heavily censored. So again, to pick some of the film with content favoring the administration. Then after EDSA revolution, independent producers blossomed like Regal Films and Viva Films. For the broadcast industry, okay. So Francisco Trinidad, father of Philippine Radio, and ABSCBN Outdoor Broadcasting System Chronicle. So that's the meaning of ABSCBN. Okay, so the local online media. So in March 1994, we became connected to the world of internet. 2011 was the Philippines was named as the social media capital of the world. Then we have the global village, refers to how countries seem to have erased physical boundaries by existing virtually via media. So we have there the Facebook, okay, and then now we have the Twitter. We have actually a lot. It evolved to a lot of change, to a lot of use of media or gadgets. Um, Especially now that it's pandemic, so we really um the pandemic actually limits us to be physically together, but because of media, because of the changes of media, um, or because of this evolution in media, we are able to be still connected, okay, virtually. So we have now the Zoom. That's why they have the Zoom party. So they do everything on Zoom thanks to the technology that we have. So from globalization to localization, so globalization is the process. The company or organization expands to operate internationally. So we have there Jollibee. Jollibee now has a lot of stores in different countries where Filipinos are. So when you go to Jollibee, at least you get to feel the ambience of being in the Philippines. And localization occurs when global media corporations adapt or localize their operations and output to accommodate local circumstances. Like the MTV, you have their MTV Asia or MTV Philippines, then you have the CNN Philippines. Okay? And that's about it. Thank you, guys.